You alright? My name's Paul, I've got autism, and I make random videos based on my version of autism and the way my head works, and I stick the videos on the internet in case you fancy giving them a watch. That's it. And I hope you're all doing alright. A couple of things before we crack on. The first one is I'm going to do this video over two videos because it's just another one of those little changes. I'm cutting myself some slack. I try to throw as much as I can in a video whilst I tell stories and what have you. And then I always find myself chasing the end. And I'd rather not do that. I'd rather take my time and talk because I'm not trying to win over the votes. I'm just after talking to people. That's all. So, yeah, I've decided to do this video over two. Um, what things do I want to talk about? One of them is if the lighting is different in this video, it's because I usually have a light in the far corner, but it's only got two sockets, and usually the two sockets are taken up with a small lamp, which is what gives me a background light, and the other socket is for a freestanding light that I use kind of at the side when I do these videos. But the World Cup is on, and I've had to sacrifice one of them lights for my beer machine. So I can't unplug that because it's a refrigerated machine for the keg. And once it's sort of refrigerated, it's got to stay that way. So yeah, if lighting's different now, you know why. And another one something I want to mention, which is weird for me, but the audio version of this has hit 30,000 downloads, which is madness. I can't even make people listen to me who stop in the street for directions. They'll pull up alongside me and be like, "Excuse me, mate, do you know what? It doesn't matter." And then they stop at the next person, and it's like, do I not look like I can give directions? But to have 30,000 people, hopefully it wasn't just someone's phone in the pocket when they fell asleep and it just, kept pressing download. Hopefully it's real people doing real things and having real listens. So that's a cool thing for me to see. So I appreciate that. And it also puts a little softener on it for the fact that in a few days I've got to pay to renew it again, which is about $108. So you're very welcome. Anyway, anyway. Let's crack on. So I want to talk about, and I'm not sure what this video is going to be called, I've got to admit, but I want to talk about things I changed after I was diagnosed with autism. Because as you will know, if you've watched my videos and listened to me talk about why I went down a route of trying to figure out what was up and leaving a diagnosis room, and even to this day I've still never received any help or knowledge on autism. I figured me out myself, with help of the internet, with help of reading, but it's really difficult to navigate what's helpful and what's driven by an agenda these days. So I understand it's tricky. But because I didn't know I had autism, obviously I always had it, but I never knew that was what made me different. My life was led in a certain way, and I have led several different lives within that life because I was always trying to find the right one. I was trying to find the one that fit, the one that was less impactful, the one that took less time to recharge from, the one that felt like it actually fit me. And I could never find it, because no matter what you do, even when you're doing things if you're doing something at 100% of a lie, you're going to feel 100% not yourself. So even when I was living 10% of a lie, it was sort of like, well, I can still feel that 10%. I still know I'm being fake, like completely against my design. Whereas the whole point is I've got to try and live more like me. And I have made changes. I've made changes which are very important, which I've paid attention to, because you've got to remember when, like, for someone like me in my corner of autism, I am never allowed to be on autopilot. Everything I do is considered. Every blink of an eye, the capture of every sight, every sound is an absorption of what's going on to make sure that I can escape, that I can be least impacted if something was to just disrupt into chaos. because, chaos is only a horsehair away a lot of the time. I mean, look at the world. It's crazy. So yeah, I've made differences, and I want to explain over a couple of videos. And obviously this one's taken up by me bumping my gums and talking nonsense. But I want to try and tell you 5 things per video to try and explain them as well, because just the headline isn't enough. Kind of got to try and give you a bit meat on the bones, because it's what turns you around, or it's what turned me around. I'm not talking for you. I just want to open up and share, because it's important. You can't just be fun, happy, shiny, and friendly all the time. And, if anything I say can resonate with anyone, then that's obviously why I'm here, isn't it? That's all I want. So let's get into it, my friends. So, the first thing I did was I accepted my solitude. So, what do I mean by accepting my solitude? I mean that quite simply, I reduced the impact of feeling bad on myself for letting people down. Because, it's going to sound mean, but I do prefer my own company. I don't care who you are, I don't care what you offer, I don't care how great the event is. If you pull me away from what I need to do, I need to recharge at the end of a day. I need preparation to get myself out again. Like those wireless mobile phone chargers. This is what this chair is for me, albeit it's a very uncomfortable chair. Never buy one of these. Um, but when I put my backside in it and I do what I'm doing, I can feel my emotional battery charging again. And there's no point in me not enjoying my own company while I'm doing that, because a lot of people talk about company and wanting company and being alone. And, even the NHS, they put something out every year in all the health centres saying, don't spend Christmas alone. People who are alone die 10 years younger, because we are social creatures by design. We should be around people. And I read it and think, you might be talking to the masses, but don't fool yourself that that's what everyone feels like. Because when I sit here right now and I tell you I am fine by myself, I am fine in my own company, I am fine relaxing with no other humans to interact with, I mean it. I mean it from the bottom of my feet to the top of my balding head. I mean it. And I like it, because, you are, well, it's been said before and I've mentioned it before, but someone mentioned in a post to me when I was talking about, the recharge that I have to do and the preparation I have to do just to open a front door and leave that front door and exist as a very blank, bland person out in the world to not get noticed. That takes a lot. And they were like, well, yeah, your life just sounds like you're existing, you're not living. And I think, okay, well, what would you have me do? Live an Instagram life where everything's always about capturing that picture to get the likes? Because that'll be against my design. And I could go out, I could go on big hikes. I do like the outdoors, but I've got to get there. I don't have anything on my doorstep, so I've still got to get in the car. I've still got to travel through people who don't want to drive very well and they don't want to use indicators. They want to cut you up. They want to speed. They want to be right behind your backside in your car. And then you finally get there. There's no car parking spaces, and by the time you get there, you just want to come home again, because it's like, oh, how stressful was this to come out for a walk in nature? So it's not always good for me. I need to have excess charge, So if it takes me 100% so I can leave the house and do the world again for the next week, I'd need 120% charge so I can go, do you know what? I'm feeling great. I'm going to leave this house. I'm going to go on that walk. I'm going to suffer that traffic because I really want to go and watch a sunset or whatever from the top of a peak. But it's not always that easy, So I do enjoy my solitude. I do enjoy spending time in my comfy clothes, switched off from the world, because these 4 walls are my world and I love my world. My world isn't a nasty place. My world is calm. My world has order because I like it that way. So I never used to, when people would invite you out for a drink or an event or family, oh, there's this kid, it's getting christened. Now I'm just, no, thank you. I hope you all have a great time, have a really nice time, but it's not for me. Thanks. Now, if somebody wants to say, why not? I'll say, well, if you want the real reason, we're going to need about an hour. So if you've got an hour, I'll absolutely tell you. But if not, let's just accept events aren't for me. So I always give people a chance to understand, and I'm always happy to explain because I know it's very different for some people. But I accepted my solitude. I stopped feeling bad when I didn't do things with others. The events will go on without me. It's not my birthday party. I'm just an addition. I'm just another person that makes up the numbers. I'm not missed. So they don't need to worry about me. And I knock invitations on the head straight away. So I can't let anybody down afterwards. There isn't enough built up where I'm expected to show up and be a part of something. It's just like, no, but have a great time. It's not for me. I've got something on that night. It's called pajamas and a takeaway. So yeah, I accepted my solitude was something I did without feeling bad for taking care of me. Hope that made sense. Something else I did was I accepted my hobbies. Now, that might sound weird. I get it, but a lot of people don't understand the things I enjoy. That's not my problem. And that's the key. It is not my problem if other people do not understand. Because I'm not doing anything harmful. I'm not doing anything disrespectful. I'm not doing anything illegal. But I have hobbies which are seen as a little bit weird for some people. So I've told you a million times, I watch wrestling. I watch AEW wrestling. I like it. And why do I like it? It's because I get a brain dump. I don't need a single brain cell to watch it. It is light-hearted entertainment. And every now and again, someone does something pretty fun. And it's like, whoa, did you see that? I don't go around thinking it's super duper real. That's two people pretending to hate each other and no one knows what the outcome's going to be. I'm fully aware of all that, but I like watching it. Just like people like watching a soap opera. That's not real either. So what's the difference? I don't see one. But it gets called childish because I'm not a child and I still watch it. But it's what it does for me. It's not just I stick it on and that's it. I need to keep busy. My mind has to stay active at all times. Even when I sleep, my dreams are so vivid. And then I wake up and forget the dream within 2 seconds. But it's just good for me. It's something I can visually see. There's lots of bright colours, lots of flashing lights, lots of fast movement. It's something to watch. It's something busy going on, but it doesn't cost me anything to watch it mentally. So it's good for me. But when people say, oh, did you watch the new TV series that 10 point whatever million people tuned in to watch? I'm like, no, I was watching wrestling. Oh, what you doing watching that? It's not real, don't you? Well, your show that you just watched isn't real either, but why does mine get mocked? So what I never used to do is I never used to share, people say, what do you do for hobbies? I'm like, oh, I like football, I like going for a walk with a dog, I keep a low key life, and they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, no worries. So I had to amend my answers to match other people's expectations, and that's not the way it should be. And I play Football Manager, a game on the PC, and I've played that since it was Championship Manager, since the very first one back in the 90s. But people mock that. It's like, why are you still playing computer games when you're a grown man? Because I want to. Because if I've got free time, that's what I can do with my free time. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. It's just a game full of statistics. Well, have you asked me if I'm actually interested in statistics? Because I am. That's one of my process drivers in life. I love statistics. I love to know where they come from. So if I've got a game dedicated to thousands upon thousands of them, I'm clearly going to enjoy it. But I accepted my hobbies. Someone asked me now, Paul, what are your hobbies? I like sitting in my comfies, I play Football Manager, and I watch wrestling. Oh, why'd you do that? Because I like it, mate, and you asked that question, so, don't ask questions if it's going to bother you. It's more like a defense now. I don't care what other people think. I really don't care what they think when it comes to how I look after me and my autism. Something else, a little bit similar, but it's very different, and I will explain why. And that is, I accepted my interests. So, hobbies being the things I do, interests being the things I like. So, again, I would never share things I was interested in because no one would ever understand why I was ever interested in it. So, if I had a hyperfixation on something and I was like, oh, that's brilliant, I love that, no one else ever got it. Like when I was about 15, I really, really wanted a telescope because I used to get on the bus and drive past this shop that sold them. And I always used to see it and think, I'd love a telescope. I don't know why, but I just know I'd like one. I'd like to just look at the sky because it's calm, it doesn't move, from our eye. And it'd just be cool to look at things that nobody really looks at because I find beauty in things that aren't in front of my face. Like makeup doesn't make a woman beautiful, the soul does. So I've just never been interested in what everybody else is looking at. And I really wanted it, and my mum didn't buy it me, because it was like for a Christmas or a birthday, and she was just adamant. She was like, "You will not use it." And I sit here before you, and it might come as no surprise, but I'm not 15 anymore. I still think about that telescope, and I wonder one day, will I buy myself a telescope and will I look at the night sky? Or will a neighbour across the road think I'm staring in their house and get the police called on me? But either way, it might be a risk I'm willing to take, you know what I mean? So, yeah, my interests are my interests. I went through an interest where I was obsessed of thinking I was going to start printing t-shirts for a living. I figured everything out. I could have designed a full business plan of what I was going to do. But when I was talking to people I knew about it, they got bored of listening of how intricate my plan was. And I realized it was an interest of mine to build things mentally to see them come to fruition. So I always used to be quiet about my interests, my hyperfixations, because I realized it got me no favor. And for me, sharing was actually used as a tool to hit me over the head with. And I didn't like that. But what I'll do is I'll tell you about an interest I've got, which I've never shared with you. I am obsessed with trainers, sneakers, if you want to call them that, but only one type, Adidas Gazelles. I'm very obsessed with them. So I've got some here and I'll show you them. Now, these are a certain colour that you might not expect me to wear. 10.5 UK size, just in case you're wondering. But I don't know what it is. I'm obsessed with them. I love them. They're such a simple design. I like the fabric type shoe on the outside. I like the fact that it's sort of a faux leather on the inside. So your sock slides rather than catches or rubs on a material. I don't know why. I just love them. So what happens with them is I keep them on my bookcase, which just sits at the side of me as like a display case for Adidas Gazelle trainers. I wish I was sponsored by them. I'm absolutely not. And for those of you listening, I'm holding up a deep blue trainer next to my head. But yeah, that's something I'm quite obsessed with. And just to show you some other mad colours, I've got green ones as well. And I've got red ones as well. And I've got sand coloured ones, and I've got grey ones, and. But they're all the same type of shoe. And I love them. I'm interested. I just like the way they look. I like the way they feel when I wear them. And what happens is I will, when it comes around time to, replace the trainers I'm wearing, I just go and pick the pair I've grown the least fond of that are on display, and then they become my next trainers in rotation. And yes, they're pretty mad colours, and I might stand out wearing them, but I don't care because they're my interest. But I would never tell people about them, but I'm telling you. So I hope you understand why I'm sharing that. I'm sharing it to the world. It's not a normal hobby. They're not exactly Jordans, which people collect. But that's what I like. So when there's a sale on, like I got all the trainers I've got all on sale. I get them when the site is on a sale. I find codes across the internet. If my workplace has like benefit codes, I try and find them and add them to it to bring the cost down. And I buy them very sporadically because obviously it's tricky to just be able to afford things that end up on a shelf. But my interest, my trainer interest, gets mocked because people don't understand. It's like, well, why would you buy things that you're meant to wear on your feet and then you don't wear them? It's like, it's not. Look, I like them. Why I like them? It's legal. It brings a smile to my face under my bushy beard. So don't worry yourself. Do not get worried over what I like, which is fine and not causing you any problems. But yeah, like I say, accepted my solitude, accepted hobbies, and accepted my interests. The trainer. Um, Something else. What time am I on? See, I'm doing all right for time for once. Is that I don't allow my difference to be mocked. So before, I was always the guy who got said, "You're a bit of a weird guy, you know that." And I would just go, "Yeah, I know." And I embraced it. I was a bit like the class clown. I would always try and find the funny. I would always do the daftest, the most stupid thing. When there was a camcorder around, because I was when Jackass first came out, I was just the right age to be silly. So I was always, just always doing something silly. And as I grew up and, carried on being that guy, and then an age hits where that's not a good person to be, then I had to reinvent myself off there and keep reinvented. But, I used to embrace the oddity because it was a way of staying important to people's social circle, of the social circles I needed to get into, but I wasn't threatening in there, and I wasn't the bottom of the rung because there's hierarchy and everything, and I had to be in the sort of groups that didn't get me bullied. If you can hear noises in the background, the dog's yawning. He's on the chair. But I had to make sure I wasn't going to get bullied. I had to make sure that I wasn't going to get seen, but I had to be important enough to not end up at the bottom of a ladder. So yeah, I would let the mockery come my way. Like, oh, you're a weirdo. And like I said, I would lean into that. And once I was told I was autistic and started paying attention to me and my autism, I realized that part of my mask that I wear for everyone else, every bit of my mask that is a piece of everyone else, it gets affected. Because when you're not yourself, when you don't feel yourself, and people say, oh, I just don't feel myself today, I'm not very well, you know why you feel different. But I also know why I feel different because I don't blend in or mix with, a ridiculous portion of society. But once I sussed the autism out to a degree, my autism out to a degree, I realized that my well-being was taking a battering over masking. It's like being hit, but you keep moving forward. It was like, well, what's the point? You're just going to do more damage. So in the end, I realized that me being weird was okay with me. And I don't like the fact that the word weird is usually associated with autism. So if somebody says to me that I'm a bit weird, I defend me for being attacked with that word, even if they're just using it in a very light touch, because it obviously runs much deeper than just a quick, flippant remark for me because of my history and then being told I was autistic and then having to relearn who I actually was in my 30s, which is daft to do, silly to do. So I'd done what I could. So when I hear that word now, I defend, and I make people understand why they've offended me. And if they don't want to accept that, that's their doing, but I do not back down. I let people know, that it has bad connotations to autism. Just because I'm not your design, it doesn't mean my design is flawed. It just means we're different. And just because we're different and you've got a different perspective, it doesn't mean you're right. So I will kill the mood of a room to right the wrong now because it is about defense. It's making sure I'm important too. I'm important to me. My well-being is important to me. My recharge time is important to me. The things I have to do are important to me, and the things I'm interested in, they're important. So I will, and I do something I never did. I defend myself. And if it's linked to autism or it's not linked to autism, I'm not overly fussed. The bottom line is I change myself to look after me more, if you know what I mean. The last thing I did was I let go of lost friendships. So I'll give you two examples. All right. I had a lifelong friend that I met when I was 2, 3 years old, and we remained friends all the way up into our late 20s, early 30s. And when I look back at the friendship, I cared for him. He was like a brother because I cared for my friends and I care for the friends I've still got. And, I would help them move house. I would help them with finances. I would always be there if there was a tear to wipe away. I would, sacrifice everything I can do, which, to help them. That's just my nature. Because if they're a friend, they mean a lot because it takes a lot for me to have someone as a friend. And I stopped this friend getting beaten up. I've stopped this friend from, he had a massive fallout with a sister, and I was right there for him because him and his sister were really close. I was just always available whenever it could be 7 p.m. Friday night, and I'd get a text. All right, bro, do you fancy going town? And it'd be like, oh, he's feeling down. Yeah, of course, no problem. And as much as I hated going into Manchester, hated clubbing, hated bars, I was there for the person, and what I realized as it went on in life is that he used me not as a friend, but more as a measure for life. And he was using me as basically, so long as I don't end up like Paul, I'll be all right. So long as I work a better job that earns more money, so long as I live in a better house in a better area, I've beaten him, I've won. Whereas to me, it was never a competition. We were just very similar, same height, same color hair. We had similar interests for a lot of the time growing up. But he just became very selfish, very, very looking after number one. But it was at the detriment of others. There's nothing wrong with looking after yourself, but don't impact others negatively on your journey. And he did. And it got to a point where I think I've mentioned it before, but he upset my best friend who passed away. He upset him whilst he knew he was no longer going to be here anymore. And my friend, in his last couple of weeks, had to remain upset at the thought of something he said. So I could never forgive that. But, I lost that friendship and it hurt me because I care for my friends. I lost another friend who had met later in life, and he was a bit troubled at times. He wasn't troubled, but he had a few, little troubles here and there. And one time I remember him over text, we were talking, and I was living and working in Edinburgh, and he lived in Manchester, and he was just really low. And I took a couple of days off. I got in my car, I drove 4.5 hours south to go and be with him, and we would sit outside in this conservatory which had no windows in. And we'd sit there and just put the world to rights talking, and I did everything I could to be a good friend to people because I always treated people how I want to be treated myself. But not everybody's like that. So as much as the other friend just via osmosis disappeared because of time, age, and attitude, I suppose, the other friend, I was gutted because he started using a lot of drugs. And he had a drug-induced paranoia and believes I did something I didn't do, and you cannot persuade him otherwise. Even though I don't take drugs, I'm not the one who ended up like that, and I didn't do the thing he says I did. So it's a really tricky thing. So what I felt was sad. I felt lost. I felt upset. They were my friends, and I lost them. But I have to pay attention to what actually happened. What did I lose? I lost a user. And I lost somebody with a paranoia problem, which was drug induced, even though I tried to help him and convince him not to take them. That I cared about them. They didn't care about me. So what did I lose? I didn't lose. I gained by losing them. So I just paid attention to all of those things. So there's 5 things. That's the first video down of differences after diagnosis. And until next time, thanks for watching and keep smiling.